welcome. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Or, I might show up at your door. I'm just here to share some creepy stories, so sit back and enjoy. Disclaimer: the content presented in the video is purely for entertainment purposes only. The theories and stories discussed in this video are speculative and are not supported by any evidence or proof. Viewer discretion is advised. From the Journal of Alex Mercer, Town Librarian, February 17, 2025. The first alert came while I was organizing the local history section. A sound I'd never heard before. A harsh digital tone that made the hair on my neck stand up. Everyone's phones went off simultaneously, creating a cacophony in the usually silent library. I fumbled for mine, expecting another storm warning or amber alert. Instead, emergency alert. Shelter advisory. Do not approach or enter any residential structure that was not previously in your neighborhood. Report anomalies to local authorities. This is not a test. I looked up to see Mrs. Wilkins, our elderly regular, staring at her phone with confusion etched across her face. "What in heaven's name does that mean?" she asked, her voice cutting through the sudden murmurs filling the room. "Probably a mistake," I said, though something in the pit of my stomach twisted uncomfortably. The message was too specific to be a technical error. Maybe they meant construction sites? But as I watched everyone's faces, I could tell we were all thinking the same thing. Driftwood Bay doesn't get construction. Not anymore. Not since the fishing industry collapsed and the young people started leaving. I tried calling Ellie immediately. My sister has always been the rational one between us, perpetually amused by my tendency to see mysteries where there are only coincidences. For rings, then voicemail. Typical. She was probably out taking photographs for that architecture blog she's been trying to get off the ground. The rest of my shift passed in a blur. Every patron who came in mentioned the alert, theories spreading like wildfire. Gas leaks, structural assessments, government drills. Each explanation more mundane than the last, as if we were collectively trying to soothe ourselves. I closed up early. The persistent drizzle that had been hanging over our town for days had intensified into sheets of rain, drumming against the library's century-old windows. Pulling my jacket tight, I made the 2-mile walk home along the coast road. The ocean looked angry today, gray waves smashing against the cliffs below. Something caught my eye as I rounded the bend near Fisher's Point. A splash of bright yellow against the muted greens and grays of the coastline. A house. A large Victorian with a wraparound porch and a turret piercing the low-hanging clouds. I stopped dead in my tracks, rain soaking through my inadequate jacket. That house wasn't there yesterday. I'd stake my life on it. This stretch of coastal road is part of my daily walk. Has been for the 15 years since I moved back to take care of Mom in her final days and then just stayed. Yellow paint, black shutters. A house that would be more at home in a storybook than perched precariously on our windswept cliffs. My phone buzzed in my pocket. "Ellie, finally. Did you get that weird alert?" I asked without preamble. "Hello to you too," she laughed. "Yes, I did. That's actually why I'm calling. You won't believe what I found this morning." My stomach dropped. "A house? A new house?" The pause on the line lasted a beat too long. "How did you know?" There was an edge to her voice now. "I was out at sunrise catching the light on the harbor, and I spotted this amazing Victorian up on Fisher's Point. I've never seen anything like it around here. The light was so perfect I spent an hour shooting it. Ellie, I'm looking at it right now. It's..." The words caught in my throat. The alert. The impossible house. My sister, who had apparently been there hours ago. "Have you been inside?" "No," she said, and the relief that flooded through me was dizzying. "But I'm planning to go back tomorrow. I tried knocking earlier, but no one answered. I'm dying to see the interior. If it's period accurate, my blog could..." "Don't," I said, more sharply than I intended. "Just don't go near it again. Haven't you seen the alert? Oh please, that's probably about those construction safety violations at the new resort development on the North Shore. You know how they cut corners. This isn't about... I broke off, staring at the yellow house. Where are you now? At home editing. Why are you being weird? I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't go anywhere. I hung up and took one last look at the house. There was something wrong about it beyond its sudden appearance. The proportions seemed slightly off, the windows a fraction too tall, the angle of the roof just shy of correct. Like someone had built it from a description rather than a blueprint. And despite the driving rain, not a single drop seemed to hit its sunshine yellow siding. By the time I reached our shared cottage on the other side of town, another alert had blared through my phone. Emergency alert. Update. Multiple anomalous structures reported. Maintain distance. Do not approach. Do not enter. Authorities are investigating. Further information to follow. Ellie was at her computer when I burst in, dripping all over the hardwood floor. Her camera was connected, the screen displaying dozens of shots of the yellow Victorian. You're soaked, she observed, not looking up from her editing. And you look like you've seen a ghost. I dropped into the chair beside her, pointing at her screen. That house, it wasn't there yesterday. She rolled her eyes. Yes, it was. I just never noticed it before. Ellie, I walk that road every single day, and I've driven past it 100 times. Maybe we're both unobservant. She zoomed in on one of the photos, adjusting the contrast. Though I admit it is strange no one's ever mentioned it. It's not exactly subtle. I pulled out my phone and showed her the alerts. She read them, frowning slightly. Okay, that's bizarre. But you don't actually think. I don't know what to think, I admitted. But something's happening. The library was buzzing with it. And Chief Hayes stopped by on her lunch break, looking worried. Ellie bit her lip, a habit from childhood that only surfaced when she was truly concerned. Show me exactly where you saw it. I leaned over and swiped through her photos until I found a wider shot that showed the house's position relative to the cliff edge. Right there. And it's not the only one. The alert mentioned multiple structures. She was quiet for a moment, studying the image. There's something about it in the photos. Something off. Her finger traced the outline of the house on screen. See how the shadows fall? They don't match the direction of the light on everything else. A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with my rain-soaked clothes. That night, we pored over Ellie's photographs, finding more inconsistencies. The house cast no reflection in the puddles surrounding it. Birds avoided the airspace above it. And in one shot, taken through a telephoto lens, the curtains in an upstairs window appeared to be moving, despite the windows being closed. As I finally crawled into bed around midnight, my phone buzzed once more. Another alert, this one different. Emergency alert. Midnight advisory. Remain indoors until 6 a.m. Anomalous activity increases after dark. Secure all entrances to your home. Report any changes to your immediate environment. Do not investigate unusual sounds or lights. Sleep didn't come easily. Through my bedroom window, I could see the distant beam of the lighthouse sweeping across the bay, a rhythm that had lulled me to sleep countless nights before. But tonight, the pattern seemed irregular. 1, 2, 3, pause. 1, 2, 3, pause. A code or my imagination? I watched until my eyes grew heavy. Just before consciousness slipped away, my phone lit up one final time. Not an alert, but a text from an unknown number. They're coming through. God help us all. From the Journal of Alex Mercer, Town Librarian, February 18th, 2025. When I woke this morning, the text from last night was gone from my phone. Not deleted, simply absent, as if it had never existed. I spent 10 minutes scrolling through my message history, wondering if I dreamed it. They're coming through. God help us all. The words still echo in my mind, too specific to be a fabrication of sleep. The alerts, however, remained. 3 in total, each more unsettling than the last. I made coffee and checked the local news, but there was nothing about anomalous houses or emergency directives. Just the usual small-town stories, the upcoming Founders' Day celebration, complaints about potholes on Harbor Street, a profile on Mr. Jenkins and his prize-winning dahlias. Ellie was already gone, her bedroom door open, bed neatly made. Her camera bag was missing from its usual spot by the door. My heart sank. I knew exactly where she'd gone. I tried calling her. Straight to voicemail. I left a message that sounded panicked even to my own ears, then grabbed my keys and headed for Fisher's Point. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the world damp and glistening. I parked at the trailhead and started the hike up to the viewpoint where I'd spotted the yellow Victorian yesterday. The path was muddy, fallen branches strewn across it from last night's wind. Everything smelled of wet earth and salt. As I crested the hill, I stopped cold. The house was still there, but different. No longer yellow, but a deep, rusty red. Same Victorian style, same impossible proportions, but as if someone had hit a color swap button on a photo editing program overnight. And Ellie's blue hatchback was parked in front. I broke into a run, slipping on the wet ground. By the time I reached her car, I was covered in mud and breathing hard. The vehicle was empty, her camera on the passenger seat. I cupped my hands against the window to see better. The camera's display was on, showing the last photo taken, the red house, but with a strange distortion around the edges, like heat waves on a summer road. "Ellie!" I shouted, my voice swallowed by the vastness of the cliff and the sea below. "Ellie!" Only the cry of gulls answered me. I approached the house cautiously, every warning from the alerts screaming in my head. Up close, its wrongness was even more apparent. The wood siding appeared to be breathing slightly, a subtle in and out motion just at the edge of perception. The windows reflected nothing. Not the sky, not the surrounding landscape, not me. The front door was ajar. "Ellie!" I called again, softer now, fear constricting my throat. I took a step onto the porch, which creaked not like wood under weight, but like something organic being pressed. I withdrew my foot immediately. My phone rang, startling me so badly I nearly dropped it. "Chief Hayes." "Alex? It's Diana. We've had reports of another one of those." She paused, searching for the right word. "Anomalies near Fisher's Point. Your sister called it in early this morning, but when my deputy arrived, she wasn't there." "Is she with you?" "No," I said, staring at the red house with its slightly breathing walls. "I'm at Fisher's Point now. Her car is here, but I think she went inside." Silence on the line for what felt like eternity. "Inside where?" Hayes asked finally, her voice tight with an emotion I couldn't identify. "There's nothing at Fisher's Point but the old lookout platform." I spread through my veins. "The house, the red Victorian. It's right in front of me." Another long pause. "Alex, there's no house on Fisher's Point. Listen to me carefully. Do not move. I'm on my way with backup. If you see anything that looks like a structure, a building, anything that wasn't there before, do not approach it. Do you understand?" "But Ellie, do not approach." Each word hammered home. "I'll be there in 10 minutes." She hung up. I stared at the house, mind racing. How could Hayes not know about it? It was massive, impossible to miss. Unless not everyone could see it. The thought sent a fresh wave of panic through me. If Hayes arrived and couldn't see the house, how would we find Ellie? How would we get her back? I took a picture with my phone, then forced myself to step away from the house, back to Ellie's car. As I moved, I swore the building shifted slightly, as if tracking my movement. 9 agonizing minutes later, 2 police cruisers pulled up, lights flashing but sirens silent. Hayes emerged from the first, followed by 2 deputies I recognized from around town. From the second vehicle, a man in military fatigues stepped out, tall, stern-faced, with the rigid posture that screams career military. "Alex," Hayes approached cautiously. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine, but Ellie, where exactly was she when you last had contact?" The military man interrupted, scanning the clifftop with narrowed eyes. "And you are?" I asked. "Captain Marcus Reed, U.S. Army Special Liaison." He didn't offer a hand or further explanation. "Now, your sister? I haven't seen her since last night. But her car is here, her camera's inside it, and..." I pointed at the red Victorian. "That door is open." All four of them followed my gesture. Their expressions remained neutral, giving nothing away. "Hayes," I said desperately, "you can see it, right? The house." She exchanged a glance with Reed. Something unspoken passed between them. "Alex," she said gently, "I think you should come back to the station with us. We need to file a missing persons report for Ellie and get your statement." "Not until you tell me if you can see the house." Reed stepped forward. "Mr. Mercer, we understand your concern. We're aware of the phenomena occurring in Driftwood Bay. But right now, our priority is locating your sister." "Then look in there," I shouted, pointing again at the house. One of the deputies put his hand on his holster, though whether out of fear or precaution, I couldn't tell. Hayes sighed. "Brendan, wait with Mr. Mercer. Mike, start setting up a perimeter. Captain Reed and I need to confer." They stepped away, speaking in hushed tones too low for me to hear. The younger deputy, Brendan, shifted awkwardly beside me. "So," I said, watching him carefully, "how long have these houses been appearing?" He blinked rapidly, Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed. "I'm not supposed to." "Cut the crap. My sister is missing. Tell me what you know." Brendan glanced over at Hayes and Reed, still deep in conversation. 3 days, he whispered. "First one appeared by the old mill, then 2 more yesterday. This one," he hesitated, "this one is the 4th we know about." "And what happens to people who go inside?" My voice was barely audible. His face went pale. "They don't come back out." Just then, every phone in the vicinity, mine, the officers, even Reed's, blared simultaneously with another alert. "Emergency alert. Critical warning. Quarantine protocol initiated. Driftwood Bay residents must remain in verified residences. Military checkpoints established on all access roads. Do not attempt to leave town limits. Anomalous structures now number 7. Avoid all unfamiliar buildings." Hayes and Reed returned, their faces grim. "Alex," Hayes said, "Captain Reed is bringing in a special team to help find Ellie and anyone else who's encountered these anomalies. But we need to get you somewhere safe." "I'm not leaving without my sister." Reed's expression hardened. "This isn't a negotiation, Mr. Mercer. Whatever these structures are, they're spreading. And they're not just appearing, they're replacing parts of our reality." The lighthouse keeper reported that the Johnson place on Harbor Street vanished overnight. In its place, another Victorian? I guessed. "A perfect replica of a house that burned down in 1879, he confirmed. "We have records, but no one alive today has ever seen it. Until now." My phone buzzed again. Not an alert this time, but a text. From Ellie's number. "House bigger inside. Found others." The last words were corrupted somehow, the characters breaking down into digital noise. I showed the screen to Hayes and Reed. "We need to go in after her," I insisted. "Now." Reed shook his head. "That's not her anymore, Mr. Mercer. At least not entirely." The house on the cliff shuddered slightly, and I swore it inched closer to where we stood. Something was coming through indeed. From the Journal of Alex Mercer, Town Librarian. February 19th, 2025. "They wouldn't let me stay at Fisher's Point. Despite my protests, Hayes and her deputies practically dragged me back to the police station. Reed following in a black SUV that hadn't been there when I arrived. No markings, government plates. The kind of vehicle that screams nothing to see here while demanding you look closer. I spent 6 hours in an interview room, telling my story over and over. Hayes was sympathetic but detached, as if maintaining professional distance from something she didn't fully understand. Reed asked the same questions repeatedly, from slightly different angles, watching my face with unnerving intensity. "When did you first notice the anomalous structure?" Has your sister exhibited any unusual behavior in the past 72 hours? Have you experienced any gaps in memory or time recently? Did you touch any part of the structure? They took my phone to analyze the corrupted text, Reed claimed. When they returned it hours later, Ellie's message was gone. Like the mysterious text from the night before, erased from existence. When I pointed this out, Reed simply nodded as if I'd confirmed something he already suspected. I couldn't sleep last night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that red Victorian with its breathing walls and lightless windows. Around 3 a.m., I gave up and went to the living room, spreading out the town's historical records I'd smuggled home from the library archives. As the town's head librarian, I've spent years organizing Driftwood Bay's fragmented history. Fishing village turned minor shipping port turned tourist destination turned forgotten coastal backwater. But what I was looking for wasn't in the official histories, it was in the maps. Survey maps, insurance maps, tourist maps, nautical charts. I laid them out chronologically from 1860 to present day. Then I marked every location where Hayes and Reed had confirmed anomalous houses had appeared. The pattern emerged around dawn, as weak winter sunlight filtered through the blinds. Each house was appearing exactly where a structure had once stood, decades or even centuries ago. Buildings lost to time, to fire, storm, landslide, or simple abandonment. The yellow Victorian that had first appeared at Fisher's Point, now red, matched perfectly with the residence of Captain Jeremiah Fisher himself, built in 1873 and destroyed in the Great Coastal Fire of 1879. The same fire Reed had mentioned, houses erased from history, now forcing their way back into reality. But why? And why now? My phone buzzed. Another alert. Emergency alert. Containment update. 12 anomalous structures identified. Mandatory evacuation of 500-yard radius around each structure. Follow instructions from military personnel. Do not delay. Do not collect personal belongings. Proceed directly to designated safe zones. The alert was followed immediately by a call from Hayes. Alex, are you at home? Yes, I answered. I'm looking at the historical. Stay there, she interrupted. Reed is sending a team to your location. Your house is outside the evacuation zones, but we need to debrief you again. She paused. We found something in Ellie's camera. My heart skipped. What? What did you find? Not over the phone. 40 minutes. She hung up. I returned to my maps with renewed urgency. If I only had 40 minutes, I needed to find the connection, the key to understanding what was happening to our town, and to Ellie. 20 minutes later, I found it. A newspaper clipping from 1879, tucked between survey maps. A headline announcing a government project. Driftwood Bay selected for revolutionary coastal defense system. The article was vague, full of patriotic fervor but light on specifics. But a quote from the project's lead engineer caught my eye. What we're building here isn't just protection for Driftwood Bay, but a paradigm shift in how we understand the relationship between space, time, and the fundamental fabric of reality itself. The engineer's name made my blood run cold. Dr. Malcolm Reed. A pounding at the door jolted me from my discovery. I quickly folded the maps and tucked the clipping into my pocket. 2 soldiers in unmarked uniforms stood on my porch. Behind them, Reed leaned against his black SUV, watching impassively. Mr. Mercer? The taller soldier was formally polite. Captain Reed requests your presence. Please come with us. Hayes said 40 minutes. It's been 30. The situation has evolved, he replied stiffly. Please come now. I glanced at the house across the street. Mrs. Abernathy's pale blue cottage where she'd lived for 40 years. At least, it had been Mrs. Abernathy's cottage yesterday. Today, it was a stark modernist structure of glass and concrete, impossibly balanced on the small lot. Another anomaly, closer than ever. Let me get my coat, I said, retreating inside. I grabbed my jacket and quickly tore a page from my journal, scribbling what I'd learned and the connection to Reed. I folded it into a small square and tucked it under the loose baseboard in the hallway, a hiding spot Ellie, and I had used as children to pass secret messages. Then I went outside to face whatever came next. Reed directed the soldiers to take me not to the police station, but to a makeshift command center they'd established in the old lighthouse keeper's residence. The historic building had been transformed overnight, filled with military-grade computers, communications equipment, and harried personnel in various uniforms. Hayes was there, looking exhausted. She motioned me to a small room off the main hub. "Show him," she told Reed. Reed nodded to a technician, who pulled up a series of images on a monitor. Photos from Ellie's camera. "These were taken the morning she disappeared," Reed explained. "The first few shots were what you'd expect. The yellow Victorian from various angles, close-ups of architectural details, artistic compositions of light and shadow. But then came images that made no sense. The inside of the house, but wrong. Halls that stretched impossibly long. Staircases that twisted into Assyrian knots. Rooms that contained other houses inside them like nested Russian dolls. And faces. Dozens of faces pressed against windows and peeking around doorways. Not quite human faces. Something else wearing human features like ill-fitting masks. What am I looking at?" I whispered. "Evidence that the breach is worse than we thought," Reed said grimly. "Your sister documented what no one was meant to see." "Breach?" I latched onto the word. "You mean like a dimensional breach? These houses are from another reality." Reed and Hayes exchanged looks. "Not exactly," Hayes said carefully. "More accurate to say they're from this reality," Reed continued. "But not this iteration of it." I pulled the newspaper clipping from my pocket and slid it across the table. "Like the revolutionary coastal defense system your ancestor was building in 1879? Reed's face hardened. "Where did you get that?" "I'm the town librarian. I know our history." I leaned forward. "What did he build, Captain? What did Malcolm Reed do to Driftwood Bay?" Before he could answer, the room's emergency radio crackled to life with a panicked voice. "Command, this is Checkpoint 3. We've got movement from the anomaly on Harbor Street. It's static interrupted. God, it's walking. The house is walking toward the evacuation line. Request immediate." The transmission cut out completely. Reed was already moving, barking orders to personnel as he strode toward the exit. Hayes grabbed my arm. "Stay here. We need to contain this." "Not without answers," I said firmly. "Not while Ellie is still in there." She looked at me with genuine pity. "Alex, you need to accept the possibility that Ellie is gone. These anomalies, they're not just houses. They're..." She struggled for words. "Incursions. Reality trying to correct itself after what was done here 146 years ago." "What was done?" I pressed. The building shook suddenly, as if struck by an earthquake. Through the windows, I saw something impossible. The lighthouse beam, always reliable in its rhythm, flashing in a frantic, irregular pattern. 12123. Pause. 12113. A code. The same irregular pattern I'd noticed that first night. Through the door left ajar by Reed's hasty departure, I could see the command center's main monitor. On it, a satellite view of Driftwood Bay showed pulsing red dots marking each anomalous house. The dots were moving, converging, and at their center Fisher's Point, where Ellie had disappeared. From the Journal of Alex Mercer, Town Librarian. February 20th, 2025. The Lighthouse Command Center dissolved into chaos after the report of the walking house. Military personnel rushed to secure the perimeter while technicians frantically tracked the anomalies on their monitors. In the confusion, I slipped out unnoticed. I needed to find someone who had seen inside these houses and survived to tell about it. The corrupted alert on my phone. "The boundaries are falling. The houses remember," kept replaying in my mind. If the houses remembered, someone in town might remember the houses. My first stop was the Driftwood Bay retirement community, where our oldest residents lived. If these anomalies were echoes from 1879, someone might have heard stories passed down through generations. The facility was in lockdown when I arrived, a single military checkpoint at the entrance. I recognized the guard Mike Kendrick, who'd gone to high school with Ellie and me before joining the army. "Alex, what are you doing here? Didn't you get the evacuation order?" "Mike, I need to get inside. It's about Ellie." His face softened. "I heard about her."
"I am sorry, man."
He glanced at the building behind him. "Everyone inside is secure. We have orders not to let anyone in or out except medical personnel." "Who's we?" "Mike. Since when does the U.S. Army quarantine retirement homes for what the alerts are calling anomalous structures?" He shifted uncomfortably. "It's complicated. This isn't exactly standard Army. We're a specialized unit under Captain Reed's command." "And what exactly is Captain Reed's command? Because I'm starting to think it's not regular military." Mike looked around to ensure no one was listening. "Reality Integrity Task Force. That's all I can say." He paused, then added in a lower voice, "But if you're looking for someone who might know something about these houses, you should find Thomas Gardner. He was brought to the medical center this morning after they found him wandering near one of the anomalies. He was different." "Different how?" "Talking nonsense. About houses with rooms that shouldn't exist. About time folding in on itself." Mike shuddered. "The guy gave me the creeps. But he was alive, which is more than we can say for most people who get too close to those things." The medical center was less heavily guarded than I expected. Perhaps resources were stretched thin with anomalies now appearing throughout town. I found a side entrance near the loading dock and slipped inside, grateful for the hospital volunteer badge I still had from when Mom was sick. No one questioned another harried person in a building full of them. Room 217. That's where Mike said they were keeping Gardner under observation. I expected guards, but found only a single nurse checking his vitals. When she left, I ducked inside. Thomas Gardner was in his 40s, gaunt and pale, with a 3-day stubble and haunted eyes. He stared at the ceiling, mumbling to himself. "Mr. Gardner?" I approached cautiously. "My name is Alex Mercer. I need to ask you about the house you saw." His head snapped toward me with unsettling speed. "Which one?" he asked, voice raspy. "There are so many. More every day. Coming back. Remembering." I pulled a chair close to his bed. "The one you went inside. The one you survived." A choking laugh. "Survived? No one survives. We just continue. Differently. My sister Ellie went into one of these houses yesterday. I need to know what happened to her. What happens inside." Gardner's eyes widened. He grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. "The librarian's sister. The photographer. She's not gone. She's there. In the in-between." My heart raced. "In between what?" "Iterations." He released my wrist to trace patterns in the air. "Versions. Every choice branches. Every possibility exists. The experiment was supposed to let us see them, monitor them, not break through them." "What experiment?" "Reed's ancestor, the one from 1879. What did he do?" Gardner's gaze focused suddenly, a startling clarity breaking through his rambling. "The Quantum Boundary Project. They built a device beneath the lighthouse, a machine to peer between realities." He leaned closer. "But they saw too much. The observation changed what was observed, weakened the walls. The houses from other times started bleeding through. So they shut it down, buried it, thought they'd fixed it." Another bitter laugh. "But the fabric was already torn. Just took 146 years for the rip to reopen." A memory surfaced, the lighthouse beam's irregular pattern I'd noticed. "The lighthouse. It's sending a signal, isn't it?" Gardner nodded vigorously. "A containment signal. Keeps the boundaries from collapsing completely. But it's failing. Too many breaches now." He gripped my arm again. "The houses are doors. Two-way doors. But what walks through?" The room's PA system suddenly crackled to life, but instead of a hospital announcement, an emergency alert blared. "Emergency alert. Critical situation. All Driftwood Bay residents must proceed to designated extraction points immediately. Full town evacuation ordered. Military escorts will guide you. Do not delay. Do not return home for belongings. The situation has escalated beyond containment parameters. Gardner's expression crumpled. Too late. They're converging. The houses? They're moving toward Fisher's Point, toward the Red Victorian. Not just moving. His voice dropped to a whisper. Merging, creating a critical mess. A tipping point that will tear reality wide open. How do you know all this? I demanded. His laugh was hollow, empty. Because I was there in 1879 when they first activated the device. And in 1923 when the first leak appeared. And in 1967 when they reinforced the boundaries. And now, he stared at me with eyes suddenly ancient. I'm what happens when you spend too long in the in-between, Mr. Mercer. Time doesn't work right there. Before I could process this, my phone vibrated with a text. Unknown number. She's at the convergence point. All iterations of her. If you want the version from this reality, you need the original calibration codes for the boundary device. Reed has them. TG. I looked up sharply. Gardner hadn't moved, hadn't touched a phone, but he smiled faintly. How did you? I told you. The boundaries are thin for me now. I exist across iterations. He pointed at my phone. In some versions, I've already told you everything. In others, we've never met. A commotion in the hallway interrupted us. Shouting, heavy footsteps. Gardner's face contorted with fear. They're coming. Reed's men. They can't let me keep talking to you. I need to know how to save Ellie. Find the lighthouse keeper's logbook from 1879. The original one, not the sanitized version in the town archives. He spoke rapidly now. The houses remember their original form. Your sister is trapped in a house that burned. If the convergence completes, she'll burn with it across all iterations. The door burst open. Captain Reed stood there, flanked by armed soldiers. Mr. Mercer, he said coldly, I believe we had an agreement about you remaining at the command center. We had no such agreement, I replied, standing my ground. And I think it's time you told me what your ancestor built beneath the lighthouse. Something flashed across Reed's face. Surprise, perhaps even respect. So you've been busy. He gestured to his men. Take Mr. Gardner back to the secure facility. Mr. Mercer, you're coming with me. As they hauled Gardner away, he called back to me. The houses remember, but so do the people inside them. Ask her what she sees. Reed gripped my arm, steering me down the corridor. Your sister is gone, Alex. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be. She texted me. She's alive in there. What you received wasn't from your sister. Not exactly. His voice was almost gentle now. The entities in the houses, they access memories. They can mimic people we've lost. Entities. A chill ran through me. What exactly is coming through these breaches, Captain? Before he could answer, every electronic device in the hospital corridor, phones, intercoms, heart monitors, emitted the same harsh emergency tone. Emergency alert. Reality integrity compromised. Convergence event imminent. All personnel initiate Protocol Omega. Civilian extraction priority Alpha. We have 31 minutes until critical boundary failure. Reed's radio crackled. Captain, we've lost containment at Fisher's Point. The primary anomaly has evolved. Evolved how? Reed demanded. Sir, it's not a Victorian anymore. It's reconfiguring. Witnesses describe it as a massive structure with architectural elements from every time period in the town's history. And sir, the voice hesitated. We're getting readings identical to the 1879 event. Reed's face went pale. Evacuate everyone within a mile radius. Now, as we rushed toward the exit, my phone lit up with a photo. From Ellie's number, the image showed the interior of what had been the Red Victorian. But the room was transforming. Walls peeling back to reveal stone foundations beneath wooden beams beneath modern drywall. Layers of reality stacked on top of each other. And reflected in a fractured mirror, a glimpse of Ellie, her eyes wide with terror and wonder. Behind her stood a figure made of architectural fragments, a human silhouette composed of splinters of wood, glass, stone, and light. And across the image, a message in Ellie's handwriting. "It knows your name, Alex. It's been waiting for a Mercer to come home." From the Journal of Alex Mercer, Town Librarian. February 21st, 2025. Reed commandeered an emergency vehicle, ordering the driver to take us directly to the lighthouse. As we sped through Driftwood Bay's increasingly surreal streets, I couldn't stop staring at the photo Ellie had sent. "It's been waiting for a Mercer to come home. What does my family have to do with this?" I demanded, showing Reed the message. He glanced at it, jaw tightening. "I was hoping to keep you insulated from that particular detail." "What detail?" "Stop with the cryptic bullshit and tell me what's happening to my town." "To my sister." The military vehicle swerved to avoid what appeared to be a Georgian-style mansion materializing in the middle of the road, its foundations rising from the asphalt like a ship breaching water. "The Quantum Boundary Project wasn't just my ancestors' work," Reed finally said, gripping the dashboard as our driver navigated the increasingly unstable terrain. "The device required two families, two bloodlines. The Reeds provided the scientific framework, the theoretical physics. The Mercers provided something equally important." "Which was what?" "Quantum entanglement requires an anchor point, a consistent observer." His eyes met mine. "Your family has a unique neurological structure, a rare genetic mutation that allows for stable observation of quantum states without collapsing them." I struggled to process this. "You're saying my ancestors were..." "What?" "Human measuring devices, more like human stabilizers. The original device couldn't function without a Mercer present. Their perception literally held reality together while the boundaries were being examined." The implications hit me. "And now that the boundaries are failing, the system is trying to find a Mercer to restore stability. Your sister's presence at Fisher's Point, at the original site of the device's first major success, it triggered something." Reed looked almost apologetic. "The houses aren't just appearing randomly. They're searching. For you. For her. For any Mercer who could help them remember their proper place in the timeline." Outside the vehicle's windows, Driftwood Bay was transforming. Buildings flickered between states, modern structures one moment, their historical predecessors the next. People stood frozen on sidewalks, caught between moments of time like insects in amber. "If the Mercers are so important to this," I said slowly, "why didn't you tell me immediately? Why the secrecy?" "Because the last time the boundaries started to fail, in 1967, your grandfather sacrificed himself to restore stability." Reed's voice was flat. He walked into the lighthouse basement, activated the original device, and used his own consciousness as a patch in the quantum fabric. It was supposed to be a permanent fix. My grandfather, the man I'd been told died at sea in a fishing accident. The man whose body was never recovered. "I need to see it," I said. "The device, the original lighthouse keeper's logbook. Everything." Reed nodded grimly. "That's where we're going. But I should warn you." Whatever warning he intended was cut short as our vehicle suddenly stalled. The engine died, the lights flickered, and our driver swore under his breath. "What's happening?" I asked. "Reality fluctuation," Reed said tersely. "Temporal uncertainty field. We're too close to the convergence point." He tapped his earpiece. "This is Reed. We're stranded on Harbor Street, approximately 0.7 miles from the lighthouse. Request immediate extraction." Static answered him. "We need to proceed on foot," he decided, checking his sidearm. "Stay close to me, Mercer. The field effects intensify near the anomalies." As we stepped outside, I felt it immediately. A subtle wrongness in the air, like the pressure before a thunderstorm but focused on my inner ear. Sounds seemed slightly delayed from their sources. Colors bled at the edges of my vision. "Do you feel that?" I asked. "No," Reed replied, scanning our surroundings. "Only a Mercer would. You're sensing the quantum instability directly. Use it. It might help us navigate safely. I closed my eyes briefly, focusing on the strange sensation. It wasn't uniform. It seemed to pulse from certain directions, stronger in some than others. This way, I said, pointing down a side street. It's calmer in that direction. Reed nodded, falling in behind me. Lead on. We made our way through a town I barely recognized. Familiar landmarks stood alongside buildings that had no right to exist. A 3-story Victorian hotel I knew had burned down in 1923. A modernist bank from a design competition that was never built. A church with architectural elements from at least 5 different decades layered atop each other like a palimpsest. And everywhere, people frozen in moments of panic or confusion as reality stuttered around them. Why aren't they moving? I whispered. Temporal displacement, Reed explained. We're moving at a different rate through time than they are. To them, we're probably invisible, too fast to perceive. But we're still seeing these anomalous houses from different eras. How is that possible? Because they exist outside conventional time. They're quantum echoes, possibilities made manifest. He checked his tactical watch. We have 19 minutes before total boundary failure. We need to move faster. As we rounded the corner onto Lighthouse Road, I stopped short. The lighthouse stood as it always had, a white tower against the gray sky. But surrounding it now was a halo of ghostly structures, dozens of houses from different periods of Driftwood Bay's history, arranged in a perfect circle, all facing inward. And at the center of the circle, where the keeper's residence should have been, stood a monstrous amalgamation of architectural styles. Victorian turrets emerging from colonial foundations, modern steel and glass sprouting from wooden beams, all constantly shifting and rearranging. The convergence point, Reed breathed. It's further along than I feared. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Not an alert this time, but a series of numbers and symbols sent from Ellie's phone.
43.7 graus N 10.4 graus é multiplicação 1879.11.17.03.42 multiplicação MR calibration alpha.
Coordinates, Reed said, looking over my shoulder. Temporal and spatial. The original calibration sequence. Can you use this? Maybe, if we can reach the device. He pointed toward the lighthouse. But we need to get through that. The circle of phantom houses seemed to ripple as we approached, as if responding to our presence. Or more specifically, to mine. The dissonant sensation in my head intensified, becoming a pressure that threatened to split my skull. I dropped to one knee, overwhelmed. Alex, Reed crouched beside me. You need to focus. The houses are reacting to your Mercer genetics. They recognize you. It hurts, I gasped. It's too much. Use it, he insisted, like you did before. Find the pattern. Forcing myself to concentrate through the pain, I studied the circle of houses, each one representing a different era, a different possibility. But not random. They were arranged in a specific sequence. Chronological, I realized suddenly. They're arranged in order of construction date. It's a timeline of Driftwood Bay. As the realization hit me, the pain subsided slightly. The houses seemed to settle, becoming more stable. Yes, Reed nodded. The system is responding to your understanding. It needs a Mercer to comprehend it, to observe it properly. And Ellie? If she's inside that thing at the center, Reed's expression darkened. If she's still fully from our iteration, we might be able to extract her. But if she's been exposed too long, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Ellie. The blueprint is inside me now, Alex. I can see all versions, all iterations. The houses have been searching for us. For Mercers. Tell Reed, original calibration sequence won't work. We need the 1967 reset parameters. Grandfather left them in the book. Hurry. I'm forgetting which me is real. Accompanying the text was an image that made my blood run cold. Ellie, her skin now partly translucent, architectural blueprints visible beneath her flesh like tattoos. Behind her, the figure I'd glimpsed before was clearer now, a humanoid shape made entirely of fragmented building materials, and it was wearing our grandfather's face. From the Journal of Alex Mercer, Town Librarian, February 22nd, 2025. I haven't slept. How could I? The image of Ellie, my sister's body becoming a blueprint, our grandfather's face on that thing, keeps flashing behind my eyelids whenever I close them. Reed ordered me to rest while his team analyzed the data from yesterday's expedition, but rest is impossible. The emergency alerts now blare every 30 minutes, their automated voice growing increasingly distorted. Emergency notification. Do not approach or enter any structure that was not previously documented. Remain indoors. Await further instructions. They've given up trying to be subtle about it. The previously undocumented structures line has been replaced with the blunt truth. Houses that weren't there yesterday. Houses that shouldn't exist. I've set up in the lighthouse keeper's quarters, surrounded by my grandfather's journals that Reed's team recovered from military archives. The entries stop abruptly in October 1967, his handwriting growing increasingly erratic in the final pages. The reset parameters Ellie mentioned must be here somewhere, but deciphering my grandfather's shorthand is like translating an alien language. The window of my temporary quarters faces the harbor. 3 new houses materialized overnight. A Spanish colonial that belongs in California, not Maine. What appears to be a Mongolian yurt with Victorian windows, and something that resembles Frank Lloyd Wright attempting brutalism while blindfolded. Their foundations merge seamlessly with the soil, as if they've always been there. But I know they haven't. A knock at my door. This Hayes, looking like she hasn't slept either. Reed's calling for you, she says. They found something in the basement. The lighthouse basement has been transformed into a military command center. Screens display real-time mapping of what Reed calls incursion points, places where new structures have appeared. The pattern I discovered yesterday has been expanded into a complex 3-dimensional model hovering as a hologram in the center of the room. The rate of manifestation is accelerating, Reed explains, gesturing to a graph with an exponential curve. We've recorded 17 new structures in the past 6 hours. The boundary between realities is growing thinner. What about Ellie's message? The reset parameters. Reed hesitates, exchanging glances with a scientist whose badge identifies her as Dr. Winters. We've been analyzing your grandfather's notes. The 1967 reset was extreme. It required a Mercer to essentially become a permanent part of the boundary mechanism. Become part of it? What does that even mean? Dr. Winters steps forward, bringing up a new image on the main screen. An old black and white photograph of a device that looks like a marriage between Tesla's wildest inventions and 1960s computing technology. At its center is a chair with restraints. The Quantum Boundary Project was designed to explore parallel dimensions, she explains. Your grandfather discovered that when the boundaries were breached, they could be repaired by using a conscious observer with the right neurological pattern, a Mercer, to essentially remember the correct reality configuration. I feel sick. So my grandfather, what? Sacrificed himself to fix reality? In a manner of speaking, Reed says quietly. His consciousness became the patch in the tear. For decades it held. Until now, I finish. Until Ellie went to Fisher's Point. We believe her presence at the original test site triggered a resonance. Dr. Winters continues. Your family's unique neurological structure is both the problem and the solution. The houses are manifestations of reality trying to find its proper form. They're drawn to Mercer's. So what happens now? You want me to sit in that chair and become the next patch? No. Reed's answer is immediate. We've developed a less invasive approach. A temporary stabilization that should buy us time to locate and extract your sister. He leads me to a sealed door at the far end of the room. 2 armed guards step aside as he scans his biometrics. Beyond lies a smaller chamber containing a modern version of the device from the photograph, sleeker, with fewer exposed wires and more digital components, but recognizably the same machine. This is a mobile quantum anchor, Reed explains. It amplifies a Mercer's natural ability to stabilize reality without requiring permanent integration. With this, you can approach one of the anomalous houses safely and potentially communicate with your sister. I stare at the device. It's worn like a backpack, with a headset component that reminds me uncomfortably of the restraint chair in the old photo. I thought you said not to enter the houses. We're not suggesting you enter. Merely approach. The device will create a stable field around you, allowing you to perceive what's happening without being affected by the quantum fluctuations. Like a diving bell for reality. Hayes, who has been silent until now, steps forward. I should go on record saying this is a terrible idea. We don't know enough about these anomalies. Noted, Chief, Reed says dismissively. But we're running out of options. The government is considering more drastic containment protocols if we can't stabilize the situation. What does that mean? Ask. Hayes answers before Reed can stop her. It means they're preparing to evacuate and quarantine the entire town.
Possibly permanent confinement.
The implications hit me like a physical blow. Driftwood Bay sealed off forever. Hundreds of lives disrupted. Homes abandoned. How long do we have? Ask. The order is being prepared now, Reed admits. We have until sundown. After that, military protocol takes precedence over our research directive. 6 hours. 6 hours to save my sister and my town. I'll do it, I say. Show me how to use this thing. The training takes 2 hours, precious time I resent losing. But Reed insists I understand exactly how the device works. The quantum anchor creates a field of stable reality around me, but its power is limited. I'll have approximately 20 minutes before the batteries deplete. The closer I get to an anomalous house, the faster the power will drain. We select our target, a small Cape Cod-style home that appeared 3 days ago on Ocean Avenue. It's one of the earliest manifestations and, according to Reed's instruments, one of the most stable. The perfect test case. As we approach in Reed's vehicle, I notice something I hadn't before. The houses aren't completely static. They shimmer slightly, like heat waves rising from hot asphalt, and occasionally they flicker, as if they're struggling to remain in our reality. Remember, Reed says as he helps me into the quantum anchor, don't enter the structure no matter what you see or hear. Maintain at least 3 feet distance from the outer walls. If the anchor's alarm sounds, you turn around and walk. Don't run, directly back to our position. The device is heavy on my shoulders, the headset uncomfortable against my temples. A small display on my wrist shows battery level and field strength. Currently at 100%. What if I see Ellie? Ask. Reed's expression softens slightly. If you make contact, try to communicate. Get her to tell you her exact location. We can use that data to narrow our search parameters. Hayes hands me a body camera. We'll be monitoring everything you see and hear. If anything goes wrong, anything at all, we pull you out immediately. I nod, throat suddenly dry. Let's do this. The walk from our vehicle to the house feels impossibly long. With each step, the strange sensation I've been experiencing since this began intensifies. That dissonant pressure in my skull, like reality itself is pressing against my brain. But the quantum anchor seems to be working. The feeling remains manageable. At 20 feet from the house, I notice the first anomaly. The windows don't reflect the outside world correctly. Instead of showing the gray February sky and bare trees, they display a summer scene with lush greenery, as if the house exists in a different season entirely. Are you seeing this? I speak into the communication device. Affirmative. Reed's voice comes through my earpiece. Temporal displacement. Keep moving, but slowly. At 10 feet, the battery indicator drops to 85%. The drain is happening faster than expected. The air around the house seems to warp, like looking through uneven glass. The foundation of the structure no longer meets the ground in a straight line. It curves impossibly, as if the earth itself is bending to accommodate it. Alex, Hayes' voice now. Something's happening with the door. I focus on the front entrance and feel my heart stutter. The door is changing color, cycling through various woods and finishes, settling briefly on each before shifting again. And then, as if responding to my attention, it stops on a familiar red paint, the exact shade of my childhood home's front door. It's adapting, I whisper. It knows I'm here. Battery at 70%, Reed warns. You have approximately 14 minutes remaining. I take another step forward, now just 6 feet from the front porch. The entire house seems to respond to my proximity, its features shifting subtly, the window frames changing shape, the roof altering its pitch, all inching toward architectural elements I recognize from my own history. It's becoming more like my family home, I report. It's customizing itself. This confirms our theory. Reed sounds excited despite the tension. The anomalies are attempts to create interfaces familiar to Mercer's. They're trying to communicate. As if triggered by his words, the front door swings open. The interior beyond is dark, but not empty. Movement shifts in the shadows. Alex, a voice calls out. Ellie's voice. Is that you out there? My heart leaps. Ellie, I'm here. Battery at 55%. Reed interrupts urgently. Do not approach further. But Ellie's silhouette appears in the doorway now, backlit by an impossible light source. Her outline is wrong somehow, too angular in places, too fluid in others. But it's unmistakably my sister. Alex, you need to come inside, she calls. I found grandfather's journals. The real ones. I know how to fix this. Ellie, I can't enter. It's not safe. I take a half step forward despite my own words. Tell me where you are, your real location, so we can find you. She tilts her head in a motion that's not quite natural. I'm right here, Alex. Where else would I be? Battery at 40%, Reed warns. 10 minutes remaining. Something's not right. Hayes cuts in. That doesn't match your sister's voice pattern from previous recordings, but it sounds exactly like Ellie to me. The same inflection, the same slight rasp when she's tired. I find myself taking another step forward without consciously deciding to. Alex, stop, Reed shouts in my ear. It's manipulating you. The figure in the doorway shifts, and for a moment, just a split second, I see it as it truly is. Not Ellie at all, but a construct of architectural elements roughly formed into human shape, with fragments of my sister's features embedded in it like a grotesque mosaic. I stumble backward, horrified. The quantum anchor's alarm begins to sound, a high-pitched whine signaling field instability. Get out of there now, Hayes commands. But as I turn to retreat, the ground beneath me lurches. The lawn between me and safety ripples like water, stretching impossibly. What was a 10-foot distance suddenly becomes 30, then 50 feet. The anchor's failing. Reed's voice is frantic. Battery at 25%. The figure in the doorway speaks again, but no longer with Ellie's voice. It's deeper now, older. A voice I know only from ancient home movies. Alexander, my grandfather's voice. The reset parameters won't work anymore. There's only one way to fix this. Despite everything, I find myself turning back toward the house. What way? The boundaries must be redrawn completely, not patched, rewritten. The figure steps fully into the light, and what I see sends ice through my veins. It's a perfect fusion of my grandfather and my sister, their features merged into one impossible face. Only a Mercer can do it. But not alone this time. Battery critical, Reed shouts. Alex, move now. I force myself to turn away, to push toward safety despite the distorted distances. Each step feels like walking through deep mud. The world around me flickers, reality struggling to maintain coherence as the quantum anchor fails. Behind me, my grandfather's sister's voice calls out one last message. Find the original blueprints, Alex. Not of the device, of the town, before it was Driftwood Bay, before the Reeds or the Mercers arrived. Find what was here first. I stumble the last few feet into Reed's waiting arms as the quantum anchor gives out completely. The backlash of unfiltered reality hits me like a physical blow, and darkness closes in from all sides. The last thing I hear before consciousness slips away is another emergency alert blaring from nearby vehicles. Emergency notification. Do not enter any house that wasn't there yesterday. Evacuation protocol initiating in 3 hours. This is not a drill. From the Journal of Alex Mercer, Town Librarian. February 22nd, 2025 evening. I woke in a military medical tent, and 4 in my arm and the persistent wail of emergency sirens in the distance. Hayes sat beside my bed, her uniform rumpled and dark circles under her eyes. The evacuation had begun. How long was I out? I asked, my throat raw. 3 hours, she replied, helping me sit up. Reed's been shipped back to command. They've deemed the situation beyond containment. The tent canvas rippled with activity outside. Soldiers rushing, vehicles rumbling past. Through the partially open flap, I could see military transports loaded with frightened townspeople. They're really doing it, I said. Abandoning Driftwood Bay. Hayes nodded grimly. The anomalies have spread. 47 houses now, all shifting constantly. 2 soldiers disappeared inside one this morning. Reed's quantum anchor technology failed catastrophically. I swung my legs over the side of the cot, ignoring the wave of dizziness. Where's Reed now? Communications center they've set up at the town hall, coordinating with whoever's pulling the strings. She lowered her voice. He's giving up, Alex. They all are. And Ellie, no change. No new communications. I thought about the last message, the bizarre figure with its impossible face. Find the original blueprints. Before it was Driftwood Bay. I need to get to the Historical Society, I said, pulling the 4 from my arm despite Hayes's protest. If there are original town blueprints, that's where they'd be. Alex, we have less than 2 hours before they lock this place down completely. After that, nobody gets in or out, possibly for decades. Then we better hurry, I said, standing on unsteady legs. The town I'd spent my entire life in had become unrecognizable. Military checkpoints blocked major intersections. Apache helicopters thundered overhead, monitoring the spreading anomalies. And the houses, God, the houses they'd evolved. No longer content to merely exist where they shouldn't, they now actively transformed, features migrating between structures like viruses exchanging genetic material. A Victorian turret sprouted from a mid-century ranch home. A colonial facade phased into brutalist concrete before our eyes. And everywhere, the emergency broadcasts blared, their message now delivered in multiple languages. Do not approach any structure that has appeared spontaneously. Follow evacuation protocols immediately. Hayes drove us through back streets to avoid the checkpoints, her police credentials barely getting us through when we couldn't avoid them. The Historical Society stood on the edge of town, a converted 19th century customs house that held archives dating back to Driftwood Bay's founding. I need to check something, Hayes said as we pulled up. Reed mentioned a broadcast center. If I can access it, maybe I can find something they're not telling us. Meet back here in 1 hour? I suggested. She nodded, checked her service weapon, and headed toward town hall. The Historical Society was deserted, its curator likely among the evacuated. I used my librarian's master key to enter, navigating the darkened halls to the archive room. Unlike the digital systems at the library, these records were physical, fragile maps and documents preserved in climate-controlled cases. I went directly to the oldest section, where materials from before Driftwood Bay's official 1823 founding were kept. Most were sailing charts and natural history surveys, but in a bottom drawer, I found what I was looking for, a yellowed tube containing architectural plans dated 1801. The tube was labeled simply, Original Settlement Proposal Reed and Mercer Consortium. My hands trembled as I carefully unrolled the brittle paper on the large viewing table. The plans showed not Driftwood Bay, but New Providence Harbor, a proposed settlement that never materialized under that name. The layout was similar to the modern town, but with crucial differences. Where the lighthouse now stood, the plans showed an unusual structure labeled Harmonic Resonance Observatory. and scattered throughout the proposed town were 7 identical buildings marked as boundary markers. I photographed everything with my phone, then turned my attention to a thin leather journal tucked inside the same drawer. The cover bore no title, only 2 interlinked symbols, a reed and what appeared to be a measuring tool. Inside, the handwriting alternated between 2 distinct styles, as if 2 people had taken turns making entries. September 14, 1801. The resonance experiments proceed apace. M's unusual perception continues to prove invaluable. He can sense the thinness between worlds without instrumentation, guiding our placement of the markers with unprecedented precision. October 3, 1801. R's calculations suggest 7 anchor points will create a stable field. We have selected locations where the boundary membrane appears most receptive. Construction begins tomorrow. November 17, 1801. Disaster. The initial activation created a cascading reaction we could not control. The buildings themselves have become entangled across multiple realities. We have sealed the central node and disbanded the settlement project. The town must never be built as planned. December 1, 1801. We have agreed to separate the families. The Reeds will monitor from a distance. The Mercers will remain as observers, their presence necessary to maintain basic stability. Neither family shall speak of what occurred here. The knowledge is too dangerous. My phone buzzed with a text from Hayes. Found something. Meet at Town Hall broadcast room now. Town Hall was a fortress of military activity, but Hayes met me at a service entrance, her police chief's badge getting us past the single guard. She looked shaken. The emergency broadcasts, she whispered as she led me through maintenance corridors. They're not what they seem. The broadcast room was a makeshift affair. Government equipment hastily installed in what had once been a storage area. Hayes had subdued the lone technician, who lay unconscious in the corner. We have maybe 5 minutes before they realize something's wrong, she said, gesturing to the main console. Look at this. She pulled up a file labeled Operation Resonance Containment. Within it were the emergency alert protocols, but not just for today's crisis. The file contained alerts dating back to 1967, 1923, and 1879. This has happened before, I breathed, multiple times, and each time they used the alerts to control public movement, Hayes said, to direct people away from the boundary markers while they attempted repairs. She pulled up another screen showing a real-time map of Driftwood Bay. 7 locations were highlighted in red, each one a site where multiple anomalous houses had clustered. These match the boundary markers from the 1801 plans, I said, showing her my phone photos. Hayes nodded grimly. But that's not all. Look at the broadcast schedule. The emergency alerts weren't just warnings. They were encoded signals, transmitted at precise intervals and frequencies. Not meant just for human ears, but for something else. They're trying to communicate with whatever's on the other side of the boundary, Hayes whispered, using these broadcasts as a carrier wave. As if responding to her words, the main screen flickered. The military encryption dissolved, replaced by a different interface entirely. Ancient programming language scrolling across the screen, interspersed with architectural diagrams that shifted and morphed like the houses themselves. What's happening? Hayes backed away from the console. It's reaching back, I realized. The system on the other side, it's accessing ours. A message formed on the screen, the letters assembling themselves like a house being constructed. A Mercer authenticated. Access granted. Original parameters requested. Below this appeared a sequence of coordinates and mathematical formulas that meant nothing to me, but alongside them, 7 addresses in Driftwood Bay. The original boundary marker locations. And at the bottom, a final message. Mercer integration 78% complete. Awaiting primary observer for recalibration. Time remaining, 43 minutes. Ellie, I whispered. She's still alive. The door burst open behind us. Reed stood there, flanked by armed soldiers, his face a mask of fury that quickly transformed to shock as he saw the screen. How did you access that? He demanded. That's beyond any security clearance. It recognized me, I said. Just like the houses do. Reed dismissed the soldiers with a sharp gesture, locking the door behind them. You don't understand what you're dealing with, he said, voice low and dangerous. This isn't just about your sister anymore. The entire eastern seaboard could be affected if these anomalies continue to spread. Then help me, I pleaded. The system is asking for original parameters. It needs a Mercer to recalibrate. Reed's composure cracked. Every time this happens, a Mercer dies, Alex. Your grandfather in 67, your great-grandmother in 23. The system doesn't recalibrate, it consumes. It uses your family's consciousness to patch reality. But Ellie isn't dead, I insisted. The message says, integration 78% complete. There's still time. Hayes stepped forward. The boundary markers from 1801, they match the anomaly clusters. If we could somehow access all 7 simultaneously, a violent tremor shook the building, cutting her off. The emergency sirens outside changed tone, becoming a single sustained note that made my teeth vibrate. Through the room's single window, I could see the impossible houses from throughout Driftwood Bay's history uprooting themselves, moving through the streets like massive, architectural beasts. They were converging on the 7 boundary points. It's happening, Reed whispered, horror in his voice. Full boundary collapse. On the screen, a countdown appeared. Convergence initiated. Observer required at central node in 42:17. All boundary markers active. The last message cycled through several languages before settling on English. Come home, Alex. The houses remember you. My phone vibrated with an incoming text. The sender, Ellie. The message contained a single image, the lighthouse, but not as it existed now. As it appeared in the 1801 plans. The harmonic resonance observatory. Beneath it, 7 words. All versions of me are waiting for you. From the Journal of Alex Mercer, Town Librarian. February 22, 2025, night. Reed ordered an immediate evacuation of Town Hall as the building's foundation began to shift beneath our feet. The walls rippled like fabric in a breeze, windows stretching into impossible shapes before shattering outward. We sprinted through corridors that seemed to elongate with each step, pursued by the sound of splintering wood and cracking concrete. The vehicles, Hayes shouted as we burst through the emergency exit. We need to get to the lighthouse, but the parking lot had become a surreal landscape of half-formed structures. Carports and garages from different eras rising from the asphalt, merging with the military vehicles. Reed's SUV was now partially embedded in what looked like a 1950s service station. On foot, I decided, orienting myself toward the distant lighthouse beam that sliced through the darkness. It's less than a mile. Reed grabbed my arm. Alex, listen to me. This is exactly what the anomaly wants. It's drawing you in. I showed him Ellie's message. All versions of me are waiting for you. She's still in there, Reed. Still fighting. I'm not abandoning her. Hayes checked her service weapon. I'm coming with you. Reed looked between us, his military discipline warring with something else. Fear, perhaps, or resignation. Finally, he unholstered his sidearm and handed it to me. You'll need this more than I will, he said. I need to coordinate what's left of the evacuation. If there's any chance of containing this. He didn't finish the thought. An emergency alert blared from his radio. Full evacuation ordered. All personnel retreat beyond 5-mile perimeter. Repeat. Full evacuation. Reed's expression hardened. You have 30 minutes before they initiate Protocol Omega. What's Protocol Omega? Hayes asked. Scorched Earth, he replied grimly. They'll eliminate the anomaly by any means necessary. My blood ran cold. They'd bomb Driftwood Bay? Worse, Reed said. Targeted reality scrubbing. Experimental technology. It would erase this entire area from the timeline. Everyone and everything within the perimeter would never have existed. Another tremor shook the ground. In the distance, a colonial-era church uprooted itself and began crawling toward one of the boundary markers, its steeple dragging against the night sky. 30 minutes, Reed repeated, backing toward a group of soldiers. After that, I can't help you. Hayes and I exchanged a look of determination and set off toward the lighthouse, navigating streets that no longer resembled the town I'd known my entire life. Buildings flowed into one another like melting wax. Roads curved upward, defying gravity. The very fabric of reality seemed to be unraveling around us. My phone vibrated again. Another message from Ellie. The lighthouse keeps all iterations. Follow the architectural elements that repeat. They're breadcrumbs I've left for you. Attached was a photo of an unusual weather vane. A compass rose with the letter M at its center. Look for that, I told Hayes, showing her the image. Ellie says it's a marker. We spotted the first one atop a Georgian townhouse that couldn't possibly belong in Maine. As we approached, I noticed other recurring elements. A distinct pattern of leaded glass windows, a particular shade of blue trim, a unique door knocker shaped like a nautilus shell. This way, I called, following these architectural breadcrumbs through the chaos. Each structure bearing these elements seemed more stable than those around it, as if anchored more firmly in reality. A path of relative safety through the maelstrom. Ellie's path. We were halfway to the lighthouse when my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I answered cautiously. Alex Mercer? A woman's voice, unfamiliar. Who is this? Dr. Winters from Reed's team. I've been analyzing the data from your quantum anchor exposure. There's something you need to know. I put the call on speaker so Hayes could hear. The Reed family isn't what they claim, Winters continued, her voice tense. They weren't just partners in the original experiment. They were its architects. The Mercers were test subjects. Hayes and I exchanged alarmed glances. What are you saying? I demanded. The genetic anomaly in your family, it wasn't natural. It was engineered by the Reeds in the late 1700s. They modified the original Mercer's DNA to create quantum observers. Human instruments. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. My family, generations of Mercers, had been bred for this purpose? To serve as living tools for the Reed's experiments? Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because Reed's not trying to save your sister, Winters replied. Or you. The military's Protocol Omega won't destroy the anomaly. It will harvest it. The boundary collapse is exactly what they've been working toward for centuries. That doesn't make sense, Hayes interjected. Why evacuate the town? Witnesses, Winters said simply. The fewer people who know what really happened in Driftwood Bay, the better. The Reeds have been manipulating these events from the beginning. The emergency alerts, the evacuation, it's all designed to position a Mercer at the central node at exactly the right moment. Another tremor, stronger than before. A Victorian house across the street collapsed into itself, its architecture imploding before reforming as something newer, sleeker, with the nautilus door knocker and compass rose weather vane. Another breadcrumb. I don't understand, I said. What do they want? Control, Winters replied. The boundary between realities isn't just a scientific curiosity. It's a door, and your family is the key that opens it. Static interrupted the call. Winters' voice fragmented. The lighthouse? Original device. Still there. Don't. The call died. Another emergency alert blared from nearby speakers. 20 minutes until Protocol Omega. All personnel evacuate beyond 5-mile perimeter. Hayes checked her watch. We need to move faster. We followed Ellie's architectural breadcrumbs through increasingly unstable terrain. The streets no longer connected logically. We turn a corner and find ourselves in what seemed like a different part of town entirely, only to spot another nautilus knocker or compass rose guiding us back on path. It's like she's building a map for us through the chaos, Hayes observed. My phone buzzed with a new message from Ellie, almost out of time. The houses are helping me stay me. All versions consolidated at the observatory. The Reeds want access to all realities. Don't trust the alerts. Attached was a photo that turned my blood to ice. Ellie standing in what appeared to be the lighthouse's base, but transformed into something from the 1801 plans. Behind her stood Captain Reed, but not the Reed I knew. This one wore an antiquated military uniform with insignia I didn't recognize. And behind him, visible on a monitor, was an image of myself, running through the streets of Driftwood Bay. They were watching us, had been all along. The alerts, I realized suddenly, they're not warnings, they're hurting signals. Hayes looked at me sharply. What do you mean? Don't enter any house that wasn't there yesterday, I quoted. The alerts keep pushing people away from the houses. But what if that's exactly what the Reeds want? To keep everyone away except a Mercer. We rounded another corner and finally had a clear view of the lighthouse. It had transformed completely, no longer the simple white tower I'd known all my life. Now it resembled the harmonic resonance observatory from the 1801 plans. A complex structure with spiraling external supports and a pulsing light that no longer swept horizontally but instead beamed directly upward into the night sky. At its base, dozens of houses had gathered like supplicants, their architectures flowing together into a grotesque tapestry of different eras and styles. And standing on the path that led to the entrance was Captain Reed, waiting. He beat us here, Hayes whispered, pulling me into the shadow of a nearby building. Of course he did, I replied bitterly. He's been manipulating this from the start. My phone buzzed one final time. Not a message from Ellie, but an emergency alert unlike any before. Attention, Alex Mercer. Proceed to Lighthouse Central Node for emergency integration. Your sister awaits. This is not a warning. This is your purpose. The voice was no longer the standard emergency broadcast system. It was Reed's voice, layered with something older, something that resonated in my bones. Hayes gripped my arm. We need another way in. There has to be a back entrance, or... She was interrupted by a sound like tearing fabric. The building beside us, one of Ellie's marked structures with the Nautilus knocker, was opening. Not its door, but its entire facade, peeling back to reveal a passage that shouldn't exist. Inside was not the interior of a house, but a tunnel lined with architectural elements from throughout Driftwood Bay's history. And floating in the air at the tunnel's entrance, glowing with an impossible light, was a key with the letter M engraved on its bow. She found another way, I whispered, reaching for the key. As my fingers closed around it, I felt a surge of connection. To Ellie, to the houses, to generations of Mercers who had come before me. The houses aren't the enemy. They're trying to help us. Hayes looked dubiously at the impossible tunnel. Are you sure about this? I thought of my grandfather, of his sacrifice in 1967, of my great-grandmother in 1923, of all the Mercers who had been used as tools by the Reed family. No, I admitted, but I trust Ellie more than I trust any emergency alert. 15 minutes until Protocol Omega, announced the speakers, still in Reed's voice. I gripped the key tightly and stepped into the tunnel, Hayes close behind me. The house facade sealed itself shut after us, cutting off Reed's voice mid-announcement. In the sudden silence, I could hear something else. A sound like distant voices whispering in unison, coming from deep within the architectural passage. They were speaking my name. From the Journal of Alex Mercer, Town Librarian. February 22nd, 2025. Final hour. The architectural passage defied conventional space. We walked through doorways that opened onto rooms that couldn't possibly fit within the structure, each decorated in styles spanning centuries. Victorian parlors gave way to mid-century living rooms, colonial kitchens connected to postmodern foyers. Each space contained subtle markers, the Nautilus motif, the compass rose, the letter M, hidden in moldings and tile patterns. It's like walking through the entire architectural history of Driftwood Bay, Hayes whispered, her voice echoing strangely in the impossible space. The whispering voices grew louder as we progressed, until I could almost distinguish words, fragments of conversations from different eras, architectural terms, coordinates, and repeated references to observers and anchors. Their records, I realized. The houses are archives of everyone who ever lived in them. We passed through a 1920s drawing room where a radio crackled with a fragment of an old emergency broadcast. Residents advised to remain clear of the lighthouse during scheduled maintenance. Reports of unusual phenomena are greatly exaggerated. The date on the radio dial, October 17th, 1923. The day my great-grandmother disappeared. Hayes pointed to a framed photograph on the wall. A woman with my eyes standing beside a man in an antiquated military uniform. The Reed of that era, no doubt. They look like partners, Hayes observed. Not like she was being used. Maybe she didn't know, I said, but doubt crept in. How much had my family willingly participated in these experiments? How much had been hidden from us? The passage continued through increasingly fragmented spaces. Rooms split in half, floors that curved up to become ceilings, windows that looked out onto impossible landscapes or other rooms we'd already passed through. Reality itself seemed to be breaking down around us. 10 minutes remaining, Hayes said, checking her watch. We need to hurry. The passage eventually opened onto a circular chamber that couldn't possibly exist within any normal house. A vast space with a domed ceiling adorned with astronomical charts and architectural blueprints from every era of Driftwood Bay's existence. At the center stood a pedestal with 7 slots arranged in a circle, each shaped to accept a key like the one I held. The central node, I breathed. But where are the other keys? A noise behind me, Hayes drawing her weapon. When I turned, I saw what had alarmed her. The chamber had another entrance, and standing there was Captain Reed. I see you found the back door, he said calmly, stepping into the chamber. I suspected the houses might help you. They've always had a preference for Mercers. Stay back, Hayes warned, her gun steady. Reed raised his hands slightly but continued advancing. Chief Hayes, I understand your concern, but there are larger forces at play than you can possibly comprehend. I know enough, she replied coldly. Dr. Winters filled in some gaps. You've been using the Mercers for generations. Using? Reed seemed genuinely offended. Is that what Winters told you? How disappointingly simplistic. He turned to me. Alex, your family wasn't used. They were partners, equals in the most important scientific endeavor in human history. Then why lie? I demanded. Why all the secrecy, the manipulation? Because the truth is too dangerous for public consumption. Imagine the panic if people knew that reality itself is nothing but a consensus, a fragile agreement between observers. He gestured around us. These anomalies aren't glitches, Alex. They're windows into parallel iterations of Driftwood Bay. Versions that could have been. As if responding to his words, the chamber walls became transparent, revealing a kaleidoscopic view of countless Driftwood Bays layered upon each other. Some futuristic, some ancient, some barely recognizable as human habitations at all. The original experiment in 1801 was meant to merely observe these other realities, Reed continued. But your ancestor discovered something extraordinary. He could influence them, shape them. His unique neurological structure allowed him to serve as a bridge between possibilities. And my grandfather in 1967? My great-grandmother in 1923? Were they willing sacrifices? Reed's expression softened. Nothing so dramatic. They became something more than human, distributed across multiple realities. Observers of all possibilities simultaneously. And Ellie? I asked, my voice hardening. Is that what's happening to her now? Before Reed could answer, the chamber trembled. The transparent walls flickered, the multiple versions of Driftwood Bay blurring together. We're out of time, Reed said urgently. Protocol Omega isn't what you think, Alex. It's not destruction, it's convergence. All possible versions of Driftwood Bay collapsing into one definitive reality. But without a Mercer at the center to guide the process, the result would be chaos. You want me to sacrifice myself? I said flatly. Like the others. I want you to fulfill your family's legacy, Reed countered. To become something greater. To join Ellie. At the mention of her name, the pedestal at the center of the chamber illuminated. A familiar figure materialized beside it, Ellie, but transformed. Her body seemed partly translucent, architectural blueprints visible beneath her skin. And she wasn't alone. 6 other figures stood with her, each one a Mercer from a different era, all similarly transformed. Alex, Ellie's voice echoed strangely, as if coming from multiple throats simultaneously. You came, Ellie? I stepped toward her, but Hayes held me back. Is it really her? Hayes whispered. Parts of me, Ellie replied, having heard despite the distance. All iterations, all possibilities. She gestured to the other figures. Our ancestors understood. They've been waiting for this moment. For completion, the oldest figure, a man in colonial clothing with my eyes, stepped forward. The reeds created the door, he said, his voice like rustling paper. But only the Mercers can walk through it. Reed moved toward the pedestal. The convergence is beginning. We need all 7 keys to stabilize the process. He produced a key of his own, identical to mine but with an R engraved on its bow. Don't trust him, Hayes urged. This is exactly what Winters warned us about, but Ellie and the other Mercers were nodding in unison. The alignment requires both families, they said in perfect synchrony. Reed and Mercer, science and perception, theory and observation. The chamber shuddered more violently. Outside, through the transparent walls, I could see the multiple versions of Driftwood Bay beginning to merge, buildings from different realities occupying the same space, phasing through each other like ghosts. 5 minutes until convergence, Reed said, inserting his key into one of the slots. It lit up with golden light. We need your key, Alex. And the other 5. What other 5? I asked. Ellie approached, moving with an eerie fluidity, as if only partially bound by physical laws. We have them, she said, producing 5 more keys from within her transforming body, collected across realities. Waiting for this moment, she placed the keys on the pedestal, each lighting up as it settled into its slot. A hum filled the chamber, rising in pitch and intensity as the convergence accelerated. 1 key remains, Reed said, looking at me expectantly. Yours. Hayes kept her gun trained on Reed. Alex, if you do this, there's no going back. You don't know what you'll become. I looked at Ellie, or what remained of her. At the ancestors I'd never known but whose blood flowed in my veins. At the fractured realities visible through the chamber walls. If I don't do this, I asked, what happens? Chaos. Reed and Ellie answered simultaneously. All versions of Driftwood Bay will exist simultaneously in the same space. Physical laws will collapse. Everyone within the convergence zone will experience every possible version of themselves simultaneously. And if I do it, Ellie smiled, a smile that contained multitudes. You join us. You become what we are, observers of all possibilities, architects of reality. And everyone else in Driftwood Bay? Pressed. They'll exist in the most stable version of reality, Reed assured me. The one we collectively determine is optimal. We, I challenged. Reed and Mercer, he clarified. As it's always been. A final emergency alert echoed through the chamber, no longer coming from speakers but seemingly from reality itself. 2 minutes until Protocol Omega. Convergence imminent. Observer required at central node. I looked at the key in my hand, then at Hayes. Get to safety, I told her. Get as far from the lighthouse as you can. Alex, she began to protest. I need to know someone remembers the truth, I interrupted. Whatever happens here, whatever I become, someone needs to remember who I was. Understanding dawned in her eyes. She lowered her weapon and backed toward the exit. I'll remember, she promised. As Hayes disappeared into the architectural passage, Reed stepped closer to the pedestal. It's time, Alex. Your family's legacy awaits. I approached slowly, the key heavy in my hand. The chamber vibrated with increasing intensity, the boundaries between realities growing thinner by the second. Through the transparent walls, I could see Driftwood Bay fracturing, buildings from multiple timelines superimposed on one another. Ellie and the other Mercers watched me with identical expressions, somewhere between serenity and hunger. They had become something beyond human, beyond individual. "Once you join us," Ellie said, her voice now a chorus, "you'll understand everything. All versions of you will converge into one perfect observer." I hesitated, the key hovering above the final slot. "And Reed? What does he gain from this?" Reed smiled thinly. "Knowledge, access, the ability to navigate between realities at will. Power," I translated. He shrugged. "If you want to simplify it, yes." The chamber shook violently. Through the walls, I could see the lighthouse, the harmonic resonance observatory, pulsing with energy, shooting a beam of light directly upward that seemed to tear open the night sky itself. 30 seconds to convergence, announced the disembodied alert. I looked at my sister, at what remained of her humanity amidst the architectural transformation. "Did you choose this, Ellie? Really choose it?" For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Doubt, perhaps, or regret. The blueprint patterns beneath her skin rippled with uncertainty. We, she faltered, the chorus of voices momentarily discordant. "The houses showed me everything, all possibilities. But did you choose?" Pressed. Before she could answer, reality fractured around us. The chamber walls shattered like glass, revealing not the interior of the lighthouse but a void filled with infinite iterations of Driftwood Bay, all collapsing toward a single point, toward us. "Now, Alex!" Reed shouted over the deafening roar of converging realities. I raised the key, ready to fulfill my family's legacy or to break it forever. From the Journal of Alex Mercer, Town Librarian, February 23rd, 2025, time unknown. I don't know if anyone will ever find this. I'm writing by the light of my dying phone, leaving these words as both confession and warning. The emergency alerts have stopped. The houses remain. Everything has changed. It's been approximately 12 hours since I made my choice in that impossible chamber. 12 hours since I raised my key to the final slot and then deliberately snapped it in half. The look on Reed's face in that moment, pure horror giving way to calculating fury, told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't about salvation or stability. It was about control. A partnership between Reed and Mercer, yes, but one where both families would be forever bound to this cosmic machine, this reality engine disguised as a small coastal town. "You fool!" Reed lunged for the broken key, but it was too late. The chamber began to collapse, reality fracturing around us as the convergence process destabilized. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I did. I had refused the legacy, refused to become another observer anchor in their grand experiment, refused to surrender my sister and my ancestors to eternity as instruments in Reed's architectural prison. The transformed Mercers, Ellie included, began to flicker like faulty holograms, the architectural patterns beneath their skin glitching, breaking apart. For a moment, I saw genuine gratitude in Ellie's eyes before she and the others dissolved into patterns of light and shadow, architectural blueprints floating free from their human vessels. They were never meant to be preserved, I told Reed as the chamber crumbled around us. They were meant to be remembered, then released. The final emergency alert blared through the disintegrating space, distorted and breaking apart.
Conviceu fel. Proto OME abort.
Real, stable TION impasse. Then silence. A moment of perfect stillness as every version of Driftwood Bay hung suspended in potentiality. Then the void rushed in. I remember falling, not down but sideways through realities. I remember glimpses of Driftwood Bay as it never was and as it might have been. Underwater, in flames, abandoned, thriving, ancient, futuristic. I remember Reed falling alongside me, his form shifting between uniforms from different eras, his face aging and de-aging as he tumbled through possibility space. And then darkness. I woke on the outskirts of town, just before dawn. Driftwood Bay stood intact in the valley below, seemingly unchanged. The lighthouse rose against the horizon, dark and silent. My phone had 17 missed calls from Hayes. When we met an hour later at her cabin in the woods, the one place she believed was safe from surveillance, her relief at seeing me quickly gave way to concern. "Something's wrong with the town," she said, spreading out maps and photographs on her kitchen table. "It's different." The changes were subtle at first. Street names that weren't quite right, buildings with slightly altered facades, the town hall clock with Roman numerals instead of Arabic, a statue in the park that no one remembered commissioning. "It's like someone recreated Driftwood Bay from memory," I said, "and got almost everything right, but not quite." Hayes nodded grimly. "And the people don't notice. I've tried asking about these changes. They look at me like I'm crazy." "The convergence happened," I explained, "but without anyone at the controls, without the Mercer partnership to guide it. Reality stabilized on its own terms." "And Reed?" I shook my head. "I haven't seen him, or any military presence at all." We spent the day cautiously exploring this new version of our town. Most people seemed normal, going about their daily routines, but occasionally we'd notice someone pause, just for a moment, and look around in confusion as if suddenly realizing they were in an unfamiliar place. Then the moment would pass, and they'd continue on their way. The houses that weren't there yesterday were still standing, but they no longer appeared anomalous. They had histories now, residents, mail in their boxes. They belonged, except they didn't. Not really. As evening approached, Hayes and I stood outside what had been my home. It was still there, still recognizable, but the porch was wider, the windows arranged differently. A family I'd never seen before moved about inside. "What now?" Hayes asked quietly. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Not the harsh emergency alert tone, but a simple text message. When I looked at the screen, my blood ran cold. It was from Ellie's number. "Front door is unlocked. Come inside." Hayes drew her weapon. "It could be Reed, or it could be Ellie," I countered, already moving toward the house that was mine but not mine. Maybe some part of her survived the convergence. "Alex, wait," but I was already on the porch, my hand on the doorknob. The door opened easily as promised. Inside, the layout was familiar yet wrong. My furniture arranged in a slightly different configuration, my books on shelves I didn't recognize, and sitting at what should have been my kitchen table was Reed. Not Captain Reed. Not any version of Reed I'd seen before. This man was older, frilier, with a scholar's stoop and arthritic hands. But the eyes were unmistakable, the same calculating intelligence, the same ruthless curiosity. "Alex Mercer," he said, his voice aged but still carrying that distinctive Reed timbre. "Please sit down." Hayes entered behind me, her gun trained on the old man. "Who are you?" He smiled thinly. "In this iteration, I'm Professor Emerson Reed, retired physicist. But you know me by another title, another rank." He gestured to the chairs. "Please, we have much to discuss and little time." Cautiously, we sat. Reed, this version of Reed, poured 3 cups of tea from a pot that looked eerily like one my grandmother had owned. "You broke the key," he said without preamble. "Destabilized the convergence. Forced reality to reorganize without guidance. I freed my family," I countered. He inclined his head slightly. "Yes, you did. The Mercer anchors are gone, truly gone. Their essence returned to the natural flow of time rather than preserved as architectural cornerstones." A small, genuine smile crossed his face. "I find I cannot fault you for that choice, even if my counterpart would disagree." "Where is he?" Hayes demanded. "The other Reed." "Gone," the professor said simply. "Or rather, integrated. All versions of Marcus Reed have been compressed into this single iteration, the most stable version according to reality's own preferences." He gestured to himself. "The scholar rather than the soldier. Interesting choice." I leaned forward. And the text from Ellie's phone? A shadow passed over Reed's face. That's why I'm here. The convergence is incomplete. Alex, your actions prevented total collapse but also prevented total resolution. Reality is patched together, mostly stable but with seams. Weak points. The houses, Hayes guessed. Reed nodded. The houses that weren't there yesterday still aren't fully there today. They exist in a state of quantum flux. Some contain fragments of other realities. Others serve as doors. Doors to what? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. To the spaces between realities. The architectural void, where parts of Ellie and other lost things still remain. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Ellie's number. The attic. Come alone. Hayes saw the message and grabbed my arm.
Alex, no.
This could be a trap. Of course it's a trap, Reed agreed, surprising us both. But not the kind you're thinking of. The fragments of Ellie that survived the convergence aren't human anymore. There's something else, architectural echoes caught between realities. He fixed me with those penetrating Reed eyes. They're trying to find their way home. And where is home? I asked. Reed gestured upward. The attic of this house exists in a dozen different realities simultaneously. It's a nexus point, one of several in Driftwood Bay. If you go up there, you might find what remains of your sister, or you might become another fragment yourself. Hayes stood abruptly. We're leaving. Now, we'll find another way to help Ellie. But I remained seated, staring at Reed. You knew this would happen, I realized. The other you, Captain Reed. He knew breaking the key would create these seams in reality. Reed sipped his tea. He suspected. It's happened before in 1923 when your great-grandmother refused her role. The convergence that followed was messier than most. It took decades to clean up. My phone buzzed a third time. Please, Alex.
I'm scared.
I can't hold on much longer. I stood, my decision made. I have to try. Hayes moved to block me. Alex, think about this. If what he says is true, you could be walking into a void between realities. You might never come back, or I might bring her back, I countered. I have to try, Diana. She's my sister. Reed watched our exchange with that calculating Reed expression. The attic access is in the hallway, he said finally. It's changed position since your version of this house. Hayes holstered her weapon with obvious reluctance. Then I'm coming with you. No, Reed and I said simultaneously. The old professor continued. The connection is tenuous. Too much mass, too much reality would sever it completely. He looked at me with something almost like respect. It must be a Mercer. It's always been a Mercer. Hayes pulled me into a fierce hug. You come back, she ordered, her voice thick. Both of you, I nodded, unable to speak. Then I followed Reed down the hallway to where a pull cord hung from the ceiling, the attic access I'd never installed in my version of the house. One last thing, Reed said as I reached for the cord. Whatever you see up there, whatever speaks to you, it's not entirely your sister anymore. But it's not entirely not her either. Reality is flexible at the seams. Is this your way of apologizing? I asked. For what your family has done to mine for generations. He considered this. Perhaps. Or perhaps it's simply what happens when you've lived as many lives as I have, compressed into one consciousness. You gain perspective. I pulled the cord. The attic stairs descended, revealing not darkness but a soft, pulsing light. Architectural blueprints swirling in a void that should have been my attic. Alex, Reed called as I placed my foot on the first step. The emergency alerts, they were never from us. Not entirely. They were reality trying to warn itself. Before I could process this revelation, my phone buzzed a final time. I'm waiting, Alex. I've always been waiting. I climbed the stairs into the architectural void, leaving Hayes and Reed and Driftwood Bay behind. The light engulfed me, blueprints and schematics swirling around my body like leaves in autumn. And in the center of it all, a familiar silhouette. Ellie, I called into the void. The figure turned, Ellie's face half-formed from swirling architectural patterns. "Alex!" Her voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. "You came. I'm here to take you home," I said, reaching for her. She smiled sadly, her form flickering between human and something else entirely. "Home isn't what it was, Alex. Home is flexible now." The void shifted around us, showing glimpses of countless driftwood bays, some recognizable, others utterly alien. "I can't go back," she continued. "Not completely, but parts of me can. Parts of all of us can." And then I understood. This wasn't about rescuing Ellie. It was about remembering her, preserving what made her human without trapping her in Reed's architectural prison. "What do I need to do?" I asked. The void pulsed, contracting around us. "Remember," Ellie whispered, her form beginning to dissolve into patterns and blueprints. "Be the librarian, Alex. Be the keeper of stories. Our story." The architectural patterns flowed from her dissolving form into mine, not possessing me, but entrusting something to me. Memories, knowledge, understanding. "The houses that weren't there yesterday will continue to appear," Ellie's voice explained as her form faded further. "They're echoes, possibilities, some benign, some dangerous. You need to document them, catalog them, remember them." "And the emergency alerts?" I asked. Her laughter echoed through the void. "Listen to them. They're the voice of reality trying to maintain itself. A warning system built into the fabric of existence." As the last traces of her human form dissolved into pure architectural energy, Ellie's voice faded to a whisper. "I'm not gone, Alex. I'm everywhere. In every house that wasn't there yesterday. In every alert that warns of impossible things. In every story you'll tell about what happened here." The void began to collapse, reality rushing back in. I felt myself falling, tumbling through possibilities, until, impact, I was lying on the floor of my house, my real house with the proper porch and windows. Hayes was kneeling beside me, her face tight with concern. "Alex? Alex? Can you hear me?" I sat up slowly, my head pounding. "I'm here," I managed. "I'm back." "What happened?" "The attic. It disappeared. The whole ceiling sealed up like it was never there. Then you just fell from nowhere." Before I could answer, both our phones buzzed simultaneously. Not the harsh tone of an emergency alert, but something gentler. When we checked our screens, the message was the same. "Attention residents of Driftwood Bay. Architectural survey in progress. Please document any structural anomalies to the Town Historical Society." Hayes frowned. "What does that mean?" I smiled, feeling the weight of architectural knowledge Ellie had entrusted to me. "It means I have work to do." I looked around the house, my house, restored to its proper configuration. "And it means Ellie found a way home after all." Reed was gone, of course. Whether he'd ever truly been there remained uncertain. But on my kitchen table sat 3 cups of tea, one empty, as if someone had just finished drinking from it. Outside, Driftwood Bay continued to exist. A patchwork of realities stitched together, mostly stable but with seams showing here and there. Houses that weren't there yesterday would continue to appear. Emergency alerts would continue to warn of impossible things. And I would be here documenting it all. The librarian, the keeper of stories, the last Mercer in a town of architectural ghosts. This is my final journal entry as Alex Mercer, ordinary town librarian. Tomorrow, I begin a new journal as something else. Not an observer trapped in Reed's machine, but a chronicler of the spaces between realities. If you're reading this, if you found this journal, then heed one final warning. The emergency alerts are real. The houses that weren't there yesterday are real. And somewhere in the architectural void between realities, my sister is watching, waiting, remembering, just as I remember her. End transmission.